Sony Animation. This is the studio that can give you a pretty mediocre movie, to then a really, really bad movie, and then give us one of the most critically acclaimed animated movies of all time. They're an up and down studio, a little similar to DreamWorks, but not really. So today, I want to kind of rank all these movies, specifically the ones from the 2020s, because we have gotten a pretty interesting lineup since 2020 with Sony animated movies, and I want to come down and, rank these since we just recently got Garfield last week, so I kind of want to see where all of these fall in. So, before we start, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and let's get into it. This will include the likes of Hotel Transylvania Transformania, Wish Dragon, Vivo, Mitchell's vs. the Machines, Garfield, and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Now let's get into it. Coming in at the bottom is Hotel Transylvania Transformania. Now, this is a given. A lot of people have cropped off this movie, and is it right and just? Yes. Hotel Transylvania franchise for me has been like the first is good, second one is also pretty good, and the third one is questionable, has some good aspects, and has like the most climactic ending battle song you've ever heard in an animated movie ever. And for that, it gets a plus for that. But this movie really didn't need to exist, and as for voice actors also not returning for this movie, it was kind of all falling apart. And with the plot for this movie, this easily could have worked as some sort of Halloween special, or hell, there was a Hotel Transylvania TV series and this plot could have worked on. And it just fell flat. I just didn't really was feeling everything I felt from the previous movies, all the fun aspects of it here. It just felt like it was just, oh, we need to make this movie. They basically Ralphified John and made him dumb as bricks, when he previously wasn't like that in the other movies. Yeah, sure, he was, a little not the brightest tool in the shed, but he wasn't that stupid. And it just really didn't all play out. It really just felt like, oh, we need to make a conclusion for this franchise to finally end, and then it happened. Also, ninjas in this movie for some reason. Also another minus. This movie is just really pointless to exist, and I just, 3 was a good ending. I think that should just leave it as it is. Next on our list is Wish Dragon. Now, initially, when this trailer came out for this movie, a lot of people just started initially saying, oh, this movie is just a shameless ripoff of Aladdin. And are they wrong? Yes and no. Yes, this obviously takes heavy inspiration from Aladdin, but the concept of Aladdin is something that can be adapted into so many forms of media, so I can't really say that it's a ripoff of Disney's Aladdin. Well, yes, it does fall in with, this character needs to be rich to swoon over this person, but he isn't trying to do this just so she could love him. He's doing this because it's the only way that he could reconnect with his old friend from childhood. So, it's a little different, and honestly, the Wish Dragon itself is a pretty fun character throughout the movie. The animation is very fluent and stretchy. Sony Animation is kind of known for that back in their earlier days, and I think this movie just really needed just memorable villains. That's pretty much it. I really don't remember most of these villains in this movie. They aren't really memorable, and the climax kind of goes one way and goes the other. Wish Dragon isn't a bad movie, it's just okay, so that's why it's going at number 5. Coming up next is Vivo. Now, this is a movie that also came out the exact same year as Wish Dragon, so it was either this movie or Wish Dragon that would be better, and it's Vivo. This is the one Sony movie that, honestly, has the emotions of a Pixar movie. If you really watch it, I've had this movie on my radar for quite a long time, and I've kind of just been pushing off, I'll get to watching it eventually. I finally got to watching it, because I was bored on a plane doing a 5-hour trip. But after watching it, it was surprisingly really well done. You had people from Moana working on it, like Lin-Manuel Miranda, which surprisingly for some reason is returning for Moana 2, but that's something else entirely. But he cooked with the music on this film, and I think that the movie had some really, really strong heart in the beginning with Vivo and the old man Andres, and it's all, happy and dandy. And then Andre just dies, and that's when I realized, okay, we're going somewhere with this movie. And then Vivo gets moved over to the States, and that's where I thought the movie was gonna go downhill from there. But it actually didn't. It kept the same amount of emotion that the beginning of the film had, and it's kind of tear-jerking at some points in the film. And it's really surprising that this film didn't go to theaters. There was a lot of lineups for movies that Sony was supposed to release in theaters, like Vivo and Wish Dragon, but Netflix and Sony had a deal, and Vivo's on Netflix. It's available for everyone to watch. It's not going anywhere, hopefully. And I think that it's just a great film. It's not Sony's best, but it has a lot of heart in it, and honestly, if you haven't watched the movie, I would actually give it a watch. It has great music, great characters. It's a genuinely good film. Coming up next is the Garfield movie. Now, I just recently talked about this last week. Make sure to go check out my review if you haven't checked it already. But I feel this movie does a good job at being what it wants to be, and that's a Garfield movie. People shouldn't be going into this movie expecting the greatest piece of cinema they've ever gotten. You've probably seen that this movie's been bashed to death on the internet, but I feel that this movie isn't as bad as everyone's making it out to be. The movie plays it basic, but again, it's a Garfield movie. If anything, the plot itself is a little outlandish for the character, and they made it work. I do like the characters of John and Otto. I think those characters got the most laughs out of me. The villain isn't that memorable in the movie, but I will say that there are characters in here that you will remember, but the movie itself isn't necessarily the most memorable film. It's just that I don't think it's the worst piece of animation that we've gotten in years. No, that is nowhere near it. But I do think it's a pretty good film, and if you haven't checked it out, I'd say I'd give it a watch. Maybe not in theaters, but once it comes to streaming and digital, I'd say give it a watch. Next up is Mitchells vs. the Machines. Now, this movie is criminal for not releasing in theaters. This originally was supposed to be released in theaters, but a certain something happened in 2020, and obviously that didn't happen. So it released on Netflix, sadly, and after watching the film, they cooked so hard with this movie. I mean, after hearing that the people that worked on the Lego movie and Spider-Verse, I already knew that this was going to be a great film. And after watching it, it's great. After every rewatch, it still holds up. The humor still gets laughs out of me. All the characters I enjoyed thoroughly. There wasn't a single character that I disliked. The animation is so vibrant and colorful, and it's a plot that you'd think would be going one way and then completely diverts itself into something else, being a robot apocalypse from a road trip. And a lot of people thought that, wasn't gonna work, but they made it work in this movie really well. Mitchells vs. the Machines, I don't know how you haven't come across this film if you've been in the animation space. It's such a great movie. It's a little criminal that it didn't win the Best Animated Film at the Oscars, but Encanto isn't a bad movie, but I think Disney's reign of terror on the Oscars is over, because that was sad that they didn't even get a single film this year. But you guys saw this coming. Number 1, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Now, this movie had a lot riding on it, and a lot of pressure on it too. You're going off of probably one of the most critically acclaimed movies of the decade, and sequels can either go one way, almost live up to the hype, or just fall off of it and made it seem like it wasn't really a great movie. For example, Incredibles is still a classic, and Incredibles 2 was such a hyped up sequel, and it really wasn't that great. But with Across the Spider-Verse, it almost improved on everything the first movie was. It was already a perfect movie, but I didn't think they'd be able to do it, but they improved on it. A lot of the humor was great. The animation is so well crafted in this movie. There are so many different worlds that have so many different animation styles, and it's done so well. The movie is very well paced. It's an animated movie that finally goes to 2 hours, because they finally realize now in the animation space that our attention span can go farther than 90 minutes. And it was so well done. Yes, this movie has a cliffhanger, and that's probably one of the things that held this movie back from winning Best Animated Film of the Year. But I do think that this film itself is still gonna go down in history as probably one of the best sequels to an animated movie ever. Shrek 2 is there, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is also there. I didn't think it would be done again, but they did. And we need Beyond the Spider-Verse right now. It's getting hard out there. I need Beyond the Spider-Verse. We were supposed to get this a few months ago, and we haven't heard really much anything since. There's no way this movie's coming out next year, unfortunately. But that was my ranking of all the Sony animated films that have been released since 2020. I'm generally curious, where do you think all these films fit into your own lists? Let me know down in the comments, and I'll catch y'all in the next video. Peace out.